Hi, I'm Howard. Welcome to my podcast. You can find my podcasts on YouTube at my YouTube channel, which is Minority ADR 2090. And you can also find many of my Facebook postings on Facebook at howard.spence.921. I also have a lot of my articles over the past 2 or 3 years captured as blog articles or whatever, and you can find those by going to my blog website, which is black-gold.org. Anyway, welcome back. I'm glad that you chose to visit with me again. This podcast is one of a new series that I began a couple of weeks ago. I had intended to actually have several podcasts this month in April, and I had given some tentative topics or storylines for the several podcasts which I anticipated. None of them are the subject matter of the podcast today. I apologize for that, but so much has been going on in the environment, both legally, politically, financially, that I've been somewhat distracted and fallen behind my schedule. I've been posting a lot of my concurrent thoughts over the past couple of weeks on my Facebook website, where I'm in several groups. And one of the groups that I'm in is related to the education process. I think actually two of them. One is black adjunct professors, and the other is black educators. And so from some of the conversations that I've been having over the past week on Facebook, I thought I would change the subject matter of this particular podcast, article, or story to be one where I focused on the topic of education. I've been an educator. I certainly have been a student. And I have a lot of views about the education of both young people and also mature adults in the post-secondary teaching environment. And the podcast today focused on education. I think I'll start it out by giving some quotations from people over the years, over the decades, over the centuries related to the concept of education. And I'll start by giving some quotations which I'll make comments on. The first set of quotations comes from this book, which I've owned for a couple, 3 decades, and in it are quotes going all the way back to the founding of our nation on a series of topics. But on the topic of education, and education was even important to the founders of our nation, and some of the drafters of our Constitution certainly debated and discussed education, and especially, I think, the role of public education. And we'll start with this quotation from Thomas Jefferson, one of the drafters involved with the U.S. Constitution, and eventually one of the first presidents of the United States. And Thomas Jefferson, in a letter to James Madison, one of his friends and co-authors of our Constitution, wrote this, and here's the quote: "Educate and inform the whole mass of people. Enable them to see that it is to their interests to preserve peace and order. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty." So from the very beginning of our nation, there was this concept that public education was necessary for us to have an effective and lasting democracy, which the United States was beginning at the end of the 18th century. I'm going to jump ahead to another quotation from that book, which is from Frederick Douglass, one of my favorite authors, and he was a black speaker who said many things related to the state of the black man, the Negro slave, and their condition. And Frederick Douglass, in a speech at the Colored High School commencement in Baltimore, Maryland, in June of 1894, wrote this: "A little learning indeed may be a dangerous thing, but the want of learning is a calamity to any people." And there, to those graduates, he was highlighting the importance of an education, not only to themselves, but to our nation and the people in it. I'll jump ahead another century or more to quote from John F. Kennedy in a speech he gave at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, on May 18th, 1963. And John Kennedy said, "Liberty without learning is always in peril, and learning without liberty is always in vain." Kennedy also said in another speech, which he had prepared to give on the day that he was assassinated in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, these words, which were not spoken but which were penned by him and for him to share with the American people in the future: "Leadership and learning are indispensable to each other." And that certainly coincides with a view that I myself hold and have advocated. Now, another series of quotations related to education that I want to share with you before I begin to give my comments generally on my education experience and observations and beliefs comes from this book, which I use quite a bit in my writing, teaching, and on my podcasts and blogs. The book by Richard Newman on African American quotations. And this is a little bit different from the first book in terms of what goes in it, but these are the words of primarily African Americans speaking about topics that are important to the black community. And this set of quotations on education, or generally within this book that I'm reading them from, covers a wide variety of different types of people, not just politicians or leaders per se, but people, many of whom are black, trying to state in basic language and concepts their views on a number of subjects. And that also is true of the subject of education. So the first quotation that I am going to share with you comes from Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali states, "I try to learn as much as I can because I know nothing compared with what I need to know." A lot of basic truth and mother wit in that. We all have heard, or hopefully, the United Negro College Fund motto, which has an anonymous origin, and that's the simple phrase, "A mind is a terrible thing to waste." And there are a lot of bright minds among many of the people of America. And let me say this at this point, in advance to going into my general comments. My comments relate to education of all people from the perspective of a progressive black community activist, politician, and blogger. And so my concerns and the application of these quotations, which are quotations related to the African American experience, are also directed to and used, in my hope, to encourage people who are white, particularly those people who are white who may have been oppressed, may have shared similar situations in the experience of the United States where they were not regarded very highly. Jonetta Cole, a noted educator during the 20th century, said this: "The first sign of an educated person is that she asks more questions than she delivers answers. An inquisitive mind brings out more facts in a group than someone just giving speeches." And so I have taken a similar stance even before I was aware of this particular quotation in my teaching, and we'll talk about my teaching. I ask a lot of questions, and historically that is the way that much knowledge and truth and education occurs. If you're familiar with the Christian experience or the teachings of Jesus Christ, he would frequently ask questions to bring out answers and thought from those who were questioning him. And that certainly is a great way to do that. There is also the Socratic method of asking questions rather than just lecturing. And if you ask the right questions, you stimulate a mind to hopefully find some of the answers themselves directly, just from reasoning and critical thinking, while they are trying to figure out how to answer a question. And one of my favorite fraternity brothers, W.E.B. Du Bois, wrote this many years ago. And the quote is, "Either the United States will destroy ignorance, or ignorance will destroy the United States." And that has rung true for many decades, and it certainly is pertinent to the situation we have now in the United States, full of social unrest, and disparity, that a lot of the hatred and division in our country can be attributed to ignorance, lack of education, lack of understanding, to beliefs instead of critical thinking and factual analysis. So go to the next quotation, and this is from Audrey Edwards, who was a publisher in the 20th century, and it's an interesting statement, and it certainly is one in which I believe and endorse. And the quote is, "If Southern whites found the prospect of an educated slave so threatening, education must hold the promise of liberation." And that brings to my mind a quotation by Lyndon Baines Johnson. I'm not going to read it out of the book. I'm recalling it. And his statement was, well, first of all, Lyndon Baines Johnson was President of the United States, a politician from Texas who worked his way up to the White House. In fact, he survived the Kennedy assassination to become president, and he is a part of the old Dixiecrat part of the Democrat Party. But he also is one of the people who changed the direction of the Democratic Party significantly to being one that was supposedly more socially respectful and consistent for the rights of other people, people other than just white people. And his quotation basically is, and again, it's something that I found to be true, or I believe to be true, that if you can tell the poorest white man that he is better than the best Negro, then he will love you and you could pick his pocket. And you know, that's true. A lot of the tension in our country relates to a battle of the classes. White people who are out there now advocating for white supremacy still and for the denigration or suppression of black rights, rights of the descendants of Negro slaves, quite often are poor white people who have agendas of retribution and are basically trying to reestablish an order that would give them some feeling of self-worth and value. At least they are better than black people or brown people, and certainly, you know, carrying it one step further, at least they are better than any woman. And so that shows up in a lot of their political rhetoric and things that they post and say, and even a part of the MAGA Trump agenda, and certainly the white Christian nationalist agenda that supports white supremacy even here in the 21st century. Let's see, are there any other preliminary quotations I want to share? Yeah, let's share a couple or three from Martin Luther King Jr. He's also one of my fraternity brothers, and the first quote is what he saw to be the purpose or function of education generally. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensely and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is a goal of true education." So it's a broad view of education based on critical thinking and based on character. We want our people, whether they're black, brown, white, whatever, we want them to have intelligence and character. And that certainly is a great purpose for education. We'll go to another person whose quote isn't that of a political leader, but it's one that rings strong with me, impresses me, and it was from Curtis Mayfield. And many people do not know Curtis Mayfield. Curtis Mayfield was a very popular and well-known singer during the mid-20th century, a songwriter and singer. He sang and wrote for a group called the Impressions at one point in time, one of my favorites. And this quote, I think, also has some importance in this era in which we live in terms of how culture and education come together. And Curtis Mayfield said, "Our purpose is to educate as well as to entertain." And today we have a lot of people who are celebrities, who are entertainers, who are out there and have great influence on others, especially younger people, and they should have the purpose, hopefully, in my view, of not only entertaining but educating, letting the people know what is happening in the environment and how it impacts you. And here is another of my favorite statements or quotations related to education. It comes from Benjamin Mays, who was a famous educator also during the 20th century. And Benjamin Mays says this in his quote: "If you can't go to Morehouse, go to Harvard." And it makes me smile because I lived during that time. Morehouse is one of the preeminent historically black colleges and universities. It's an all-male school, and it is known historically for producing some of the greatest leaders, thinkers, and politicians of the black community over the past 40 or 50 years. And it is kind of like an elite school, but it is predominantly, if not all, black males. And the point to be made is that there are many people of color who become well educated and trained in a number of areas, even more so than they might be trained if they had gone to an Ivy League school, a Big Ten school, a Pac 10 school, or 12, or however many they have left, and get a better education, especially in this era when there are so many attacks on diversity, education, and inclusion. In other words, black people. This is important because many, if not most, well, not most because there aren't that many of them, many of the professionals that service the black community, and particularly poor people in the black community, are from historically black colleges and universities like Morehouse or Howard University or McCary School of Medicine. And we now are seeing the strange progeny of the Roberts Supreme Court decision outlawing affirmative action effectively. Roberts said that America now lives in a post-racial society. I don't know where he buries his head at night, but you see what you want to see. And people who say that we live in a post-racial society, it's wishful thinking, or worse, it's an attempt to deceive or to promote an agenda that would not recognize the difficulties that led to the condition of black people, brown people, poor people in this country. They ought to do better. We've given them enough time. We no longer are living in a world where they are disadvantaged. And in this era where we have a lack of seats at premier schools or schools that are professionals, such as medical schools and law schools, we suddenly find that some of the historically black colleges and universities, which have never had a large number of white students, are being sent letters saying that in this world of post-racial discrimination, their schools are all or primarily black and are in violation of equal protection. It's kind of turning the horse on the head. The school where only black people go is the school where only certain black people could go up until we entered this post-racial society. But now we have people under the claim of diversity, equity, and inclusion saying that schools like Howard Law School, Morehouse University, McCary Medical School, some of the state schools that were set up for black people like Tennessee State, some of the A&M schools, you are primarily one race in a post-racial society, and therefore you need to integrate, and each seat in your class should be a seat that anybody could compete for. In other words, essentially they are threatening to say that there should no longer be any historically black colleges and universities unless the best qualified candidates for those schools, in quotes, are black. And in America, it's hard to get very many conservative judges and conservative politicians to suggest that perhaps black people are as good or better than any white or Asian person challenging for their seat. We'll see where that goes, but it certainly is a major pending educational challenge for black people. And let's see, we'll finish the quotes and then I'll get to some of my comments. And I was talking about historically black colleges and universities. They're not all academically oriented exclusively. And so I have this quote from Booker T. Washington, who was responsible, I recall, for establishing Tuskegee Institute, which was and is a historically black college in the United States. And Booker T. Washington said, and he died in 1915, so this was shortly after Reconstruction, how can you teach book learning to people who are hungry and without proper shelter and know nothing about good living? And, of course he was talking in defense of the difficulty of teaching the Negro slaves who had been emancipated but had only on their resume the fact that they had been trained by their masters to make shoes, to hoe cotton, and to do other menial things. And in fact, some of the MAGA faithful say that black people are indebted to white people for bringing them over to this country as slaves and training them to be something other than slaves. Anyway, confused thinking to support a purpose, but this statement also in today's world can be expanded to poor white people, and no matter what you call poor white people, the people that Lyndon Johnson was talking about perhaps, many of them are poor, many of them are hungry, more and more so many of them are without shelter, and certainly they have not lived good lives, but they may have seen it from some of their, as they say in the South, betters, white males who used to be slave owners or billionaires or whatever. They are better than any Negro or Negro slave descendant, even if they are at the bottom of the white caste hierarchy. And finally, he had a quote from Carter G. Woodson, who is a preeminent black historian of the 20th century. And his quote is, the mere imparting of information is not education. Above all things, the effort must result in making a man think and do for himself. Again, critical thinking and thinking as to how to find solutions that would improve your lot in life. The final quotation that I'm offering today is from Malcolm X. So just as Martin Luther King Jr. was articulating wisdom and offering pleas for change in the social status during the civil rights era, we also had Malcolm X, who was a member of the Black Muslim group, and took a slightly different and in some ways more aggressive position towards getting power and control and dignity back to black people. And so Malcolm X said, and this is a quote, "Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today." And his viewpoint is consistent with that of others, including me, including hopefully you, especially if you are an educator, that we are in a time where we need to be more aggressive in self-improvement, in developing critical thinking skills, to getting training, whether it's academic or otherwise, that will allow us to continue to be valuable and have a place in American society. As an aside, I would point out, in today's environment where people are talking about tariffs and bringing industrial jobs back to the United States, which is a thought that I'm less than confident could be accomplished meaningfully. It's a part of the MAGA Donald Trump fantasy of the moment, in my view. But at the same time that MAGA world and Donald Trump and people like Elon Musk are talking about making all these changes to our education system and to basically our lives here in the United States, they're also talking about the future of AI and robotics. They bring these factories back, but you know, the billionaires are here to make money. Large corporations are here to make money, big dividends for their shareholders. And so I have taken a position in some cases that while MAGA world, for example, advocates that women should be forced to breed and have as many children as possible, and that's basically what they say with their anti-abortion rhetoric, as many new babies as possible, I think a part of that message is we need more white people, but a more obvious part of that message soon becomes people as workers will become obsolete. What will we do with all these people when we have machines that can do it cheaper, quicker, faster? Why do we need all these people to do things like be accountants or whatever? You know, factories will be automated. Their concept is one of a profit-based world. And so when they talk about bringing jobs back to America, the jobs they bring back to America aren't likely to be filled by Americans. They're likely to be filled by robots. And so many of the people who are going to be getting jobs of the future, even in old plants and work sites that are just renovated, will have to bite the bullet and realize that the jobs of the future may be beyond their ability to perform. You know, it's hard to take somebody off of the assembly line. You can turn them into a robot automation maintenance person, until hopefully never the machines get to the point where they can repair each other if they're not already there. So we have that tension that needs to be considered. But in any case, as far as my comments, I've talked about the importance of education. I myself have grown up in an environment where education was preached as being a way to improve myself and to move ahead. I was born prior to 1950, and so I'm quite old. In fact, I've been retired since 2002, even though I've done other things that are characterized as work. They were not particularly work for income. And so my parents, my father only went to the 4th grade in Mississippi before he did what all the colored boys did, leave school to go and do sharecropper work picking cotton there in Mississippi. And I was born in Mississippi. My mother did finish high school. She was valedictorian of her class in Tennessee. But in my basic family, I was the first person ever to go to college, although I do have 3 or 4 sisters who ended up going to college also, and I think 3 of them became teachers. So the value of education has been ingrained in my family as well as me from our parents from the very beginning. And in terms of my own education, I grew up in a cornfield in Illinois, and I did well in school. I had a mind wanting to learn, and I did learn. Sometimes I learned even in face of teachers who did not have great expectations of me. In fact, my sister Ollie was scheduled to be in a class in high school, and the white principal came to her and said, "We're going to have you drop out so that we can place a white student who wants that class in that class." And so that was the environment in which people of my age, generation, and geographic location had to fight to get an education. And fortunately, we were able to some degree. But I was the first one to go to college, and I don't know, maybe it's bragging, but it's reality, it's fact, it's pride. You always should be proud of your achievements. That is something that goes along with education. You educate yourself so that you can be proud of who you are. If you're not sure that you are at your best, you try to become your best. And so I was a presidential scholar. I mentioned Lyndon Johnson. He was the one who gave me the award of being a presidential scholar from Illinois, one of 3. And in retrospect, looking back, I'm very sure and confident that that was a DEI type of appointment. That was back in the day when black people, Negroes, were first being considered to be possibly meaningful contributors to general America. And when I went to Washington, the value of my efforts to get an education were realized and fulfilled when I went there and I was in the White House with my father and my mother, and they had a chance to shake President Johnson's hand and chat with him while they were eating from a buffet. along with others who were there to receive their awards. So I met Lyndon Johnson, big pink man, as I indicated, and it was the same day that he announced that he had made the first appointment to the Supreme Court of a Negro. And that's what we were called at that time, Negro, a black man. And, I had a chance to meet and shake hands with this person nominated to be on the Supreme Court, who at some time later would become one of my fraternity brothers, or I would become one of his, because obviously he was older than I was. And, it was a proud moment. And the point being that with DEI, I was a hot item at that time. I got more full scholarship offers than probably half of the black athletes in the country at that time. And I had offers from Harvard. I had offers from the Ivy League schools, Brown, Yale. The Big Ten, I had offers from Michigan and Michigan State, the University of Illinois, because I was living in Illinois, yeah. And, the West Coast. The point being that in an effort to make America look more like America, supposedly, I didn't realize it at the time, maybe I stood out in the state of Illinois as the Negro to be a presidential scholar. That was me. 2 white people and me. And, so that's a proud moment. In retrospect, I'm sure that there were other people who were more intelligent or brighter than I am, because I was from not even a middle class family. I was from a lower class family in a small southern Illinois city. And, but looking forward, I found out that I could do anything that others could do. Maybe differently, maybe better, but I could do it. And, so I followed through on that because I was encouraged and motivated by teachers and especially my parents to be all I could be. And so I finally ended up at Michigan State as something they called a National Achievement and a National Merit Scholar. Back then there was 2 of them. Got a little money, but not a lot. Since then, I've always thought that education had its value. And it had its value for me in terms of what I hope to achieve for myself, my family. I have 4 master's degrees. I'm an MSU Spartan, where I did my undergrad work, an alum, and love it. And I also have a JD from the University of Michigan Law School, which is a law school that I have written an article about this week because of concerns about how the University of Michigan and the University of Michigan Law School are kneeling to the demands of Donald J. Trump and MAGA DEI enthusiasts who are threatening the universities there with defunding them, taking away arbitrarily billions of dollars of research money and so forth. So in a cost-benefit world, is it worthwhile to have seats in your school for black people, brown people, who could certainly perform well there, if not in an excellent way, when there are attacks coming on the very concept of educating black people, which is a throwback to antebellum America. It was illegal and someone could be killed for teaching a Negro slave to read or write. And you know, it was a part of the grand strategy of keep them dumb and keep them calm, which is sort of a side version of keep them pregnant and barefoot for women of all colors. So, you know, so I've had my success in education, and education been good to me, but I still advocate and fight for others to have that same opportunity if they want it, if they can reach out and use it. W.E.B. Du Bois spoke about the talented tenth. I think it was Du Bois. And there has developed in the United States a black elevated social class, many of whom constitute educated black people, well-educated black people. And some of them even have, well, you know, gotten to the point that they forgot where they came from, and they think that money and power is a greater incentive than one that they would receive if they tried to reach back and uplift others with similar origins who were less fortunate or really truly disadvantaged. So you know, we have that that phenomenon going on. Now, I have taught, and I certainly have many memories and stories to tell about my teaching, and about colleges and universities and their worth, value, goals, and objectives as it relates to the education of students and the general community. Now, I've never taught K to 12. I have taught primarily college. I was at one point an adjunct law professor at Thomas Cooley Lawschool here in Lansing, and I taught for 5 years as an adjunct faculty member at the University of Pheonix, both in their online classes and in their on-campus classes. The University of Pheonix has a number of physical structures where students can go as in normal classrooms and be face-to-face and interact with an instructor. But let me first deal with some comments about K to 12. Now, I've not taught K to 12. My involvement in those areas is different. It's not hands-on. It's more of an observer. I have represented some students who would be characterized as being in the schools or prison pipeline. I have represented some students who have been mistreated at predominantly white schools where the environment is one of only the best, and they have no willingness to, or little ability and willingness to deal with students of any color who are less than the best. In other words, that those with disabilities, those who may be autistic, those who may need special education. They generally don't do much in the way of use of the preschool training programs that have been offered to this point by the Department of Education, known as Head Start programs. because not that many of their students may need it. But I've taken those cases on a pro bono basis, and some of the hearings that I've been involved in, I recorded completely student disciplinary hearings. Students are being expelled for frivolous reasons just to get rid of them, those videos I placed on my YouTube channel historically, and I'm pleased that some of them have been viewed thousands of times by educators and attorneys all across the country. I didn't know anything about doing those types of hearings, but you go in there and that's a hearing where you start talking not only regulations, statutes, and requirements, but you also start talking about fairness and social obligation. So if you have an interest in seeing those are on my YouTube channel, which is YouTube Minority ADR 2090. But that's my experience more directly with K-12. My ex-wife, Diane, taught for many years in the Lansing school system. Lansing is an urban area surrounded by more prosperous, wealthy areas. We lived in Okemos and tried to raise some kids there, and had difficulty doing it in Okemos and also in Hazlitt Public Schools. But after my wife retired from being Director of Education for the Michigan Department of Corrections, she went to teach first in a Lansing urban middle school, and she spent her last 4 or 5 years teaching in at J.W. Sexton, which is definitely an urban school. Its mix of kids includes refugees from Asia, Vietnam, poor black kids. It was a school, and of course there may have been a few kids there who were wealthy, but many of them I should say, transferred to charter schools to get away from what was considered to be difficult education settings. And Diane, even after we were divorced, would invite me and other people she knew to come to her classes and to speak to the kids and to interact with them to try to be role models. And the first few years I went, I noticed that there was a lot of excitement and energy both in Diane and in the kids, and she was very well regarded and so forth. And then in the later years, when I went and she invited me back, even long after we were divorced, I saw a frustrated teacher, tired, worn out. I saw insolent kids who had not been properly trained at home. I saw some kids who were waiting to just drop out and leave. Some kids who had been to juvenile home. And at the same time, I saw some kids who were still sparkling and eager to learn. A few kids who are unhappy and disrespectful can certainly interact and poison the class. And poor Diane, she's sitting there frustrated as she spent probably a third of her time trying to calm the class down and writing hall passes to go see the principal. And I looked at that and I said, this is not what education should be. It's not the fault of the teacher, because a lot of the teachers in our public schools are very dedicated. They really are, and well trained, and I've seen it. But more and more they get worn out. Like so many other professions, they get tired and they're not appreciated, and so they leave if they can, or retire, or whatever. So that is my experience with K-12 contacts. Now, on the teaching generally in classroom settings, you see something very similar in almost all schools that are not elite schools or charter schools that are very selective in who they let in. You know, better students. You can always make a better student better, but a poor student, a difficult learning student, or a student that is not disciplined properly, even a very good teacher would get frustrated and have difficulty. And so those types of kids generally are in public schools. People say public charter schools, but even public charter schools are very selective. But you see that also in colleges. And the lead up I'm saying there is that there are some people in colleges for different reasons. Some are there because they want to actually learn, be challenged, and develop critical thinking skills and become essentially the leaders of tomorrow. And others are there because they see education post-secondary, whether in a college academic setting or in a training setting or a junior college setting or whatever, that is a way to get a union card. And by that I mean a certificate of completion that would qualify them in their jobs, hopefully, to advance. I've got college education. I've got skills as XYZ, whether or not I am actually possessing those skills. And so that is one part of the student body that you try to teach. And the other part, like I said, are kids that see a future, and it's great to get the union card, which everybody needs to survive in the future, but they also want to learn and be leaders, not just survivors. And I see that in many typical settings, but just as with charter schools, you don't really see that so much at the so-called elite schools, whether they're the elite HBCU schools or elite Ivy League schools. They have different agendas, and they fight to get into those different agendas. Now, I taught, as I indicated, at the University of Pheonix for 5 years. Maybe I taught 70 classes. They call them cohorts during that time frame. And each cohort on ground or in a campus setting, face-to-face campus setting, would have 14 to maybe 20, 25 students at the University of Pheonix, and similar number of students in online. And again, you have that same dichotomy. Students who are there to learn, be challenged, and grow academically and in terms of knowledge and critical thinking skills, and those who are there for union cards. And I challenge students to think. I try to. I ask questions. I make statements that they can either accept or reject. And what I look for is not necessarily the answer. I look for the clarity of the answer, its basis, hopefully in fact, and how you got to that position, and can you defend it. It's kind of the old Socratic method. It's also kind of the way that Jesus is historically portrayed as teaching, by asking questions, and by not necessarily challenging people. This is a great enduring teaching method. If you can defend it, then maybe you can learn something. And if you start learning something, maybe you'll change your beliefs or your fact base or your worldview, which would be progress perhaps. But the rest of the students, they put in their 3 or 4 hours in a class session, and they spend 5 or 6 weeks, and they're ready to go on to the next. And in today's world, the syllabus has changed. By that I mean people who are professors or instructors are given canned lesson plans. So when I taught at the University of Pheonix, they had PowerPoints for each class, and they had canned questions which each class got asked over and over again throughout the years. Some of the questions and some of the answers that would be the genesis of essay responses could be found on the internet if you searched, because the questions didn't change and this type of thing. And and they didn't check for facts or for the ability to find, understand, learn facts and apply them. So they had no multiple choice tests, for example. Howard Spence is what? A, President of the United States. B, an SOB. C, a dirty old man. They don't have that, so you don't have to worry about what Howard Spence is. Just answer the question, which may be a canned response. And you cannot imagine, unless you're an adjunct professor at an online school, the number of times you read answers to the same questions that are almost identical in terms of their responses. Is learning going on there? Well, I'm not sure it's the best learning. Maybe some learning is going on. But in any case, that's what you get. And many of these schools are for-profit schools. And the University of Pheonix is a for-profit school. And that leads me to a partial explanation as to why I stopped teaching online. I enjoyed a little bit of money. I enjoy teaching, as many instructors do. And in one class, which was on ground here in Lansing, where I lived in the Lansing area, but I also taught at Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids for University of Pheonix. I had 14 students in the class on the first night of a 6-week class. I think it was 6 week, an MBA level class, and it was not a business law class. That class was human resources, demographics, labor trends, how do you handle grievances, things that someone who was already employed and was seeking to get a credential for a promotion might want to learn, especially if they wanted to be an HR type specialist. And in that particular class, on the first night, there were 14 people, and they were all white. And so I was going through the syllabus and showing the slides, and of course, even back then, it must have been like prior to 2010, I would guess. There was one slide that showed the makeup of the workforce in the United States and the projected makeup of the workforce 10 or 20 years down the road. And as a lead up to the slide, there was, of course, a slide that says it's projected that minorities will be greater than white people by, I think at that point they were saying 2030. and we're about there if we aren't already there in terms of white people being a minority, maybe the largest minority, but still a minority in America. And and I made the mistake, in my enthusiasm and the nature that I have when I present, I smiled. Whoa, my gosh! I could tell the moment I showed them that slide. Several people got uncomfortable. Oh, well, sorry. Well, that was the first night, and when I got home, I got a phone call from the director of education for the University of Pheonix in Michigan, I think. And he told me, well, Howard, we're going to have to relieve you from your class. And I said, well, why is that? Well, the University of Pheonix is a for-profit class. And 3 of the students in my HR class, my MBA HR class, had been so bummed out by the fact that I told them that white people were going to be a minority in 20 years that they went and they complained. Dropped a dime on me and said, he said this. Well, it was factually true. And but they were not willing to be instructed by a black man who would tell them that white people were about to become a minority. And so they told the director of education, there are 3 of us, and we're all determined we are going to drop the class unless you change the professor. I said, oh. And the director of education said, so we're going to have to ask you to step aside and we'll get a substitute for the remaining 5 sessions. I sat there, I was at home, we were on the phone, and I scratched my head. I said, oh. And he said, we're only paying you $1,500 to teach this class, but each of those students is paying us X more than we're paying you, and if they drop out, that class is no longer profitable because there are 3 of them. So therefore, it's easier to replace you at $1,500 than it is to replace 3 of them at maybe $6,000 or $7,000. Okay, well that told me a lot about for-profit schools, and he said, and we also have heard from another class. A student asked you if you were invested in the University of Pheonix 401k program. I said, oh no, I'm not. They said, well, are you going to? I said, oh no. And and they didn't ask me why, but they went back and told someone in management in the University of Pheonix that Howard Spence is saying he would not invest in the University of Pheonix. So I scratched my head. I said, well, why would I? I said, that is something, the 401k or something. I said, I've already been retired from the state of Michigan and I'm already on Social Security. Why would I be putting money into another 401k? Right now I'm trying to take that money and use it for living and other activities. But I had a legitimate reason. I wasn't investing in anybody's 401k or retirement program or stock program. That's not me. So I could tell at that point that days were numbered, and sure enough, maybe a month later, I had a court appearance on the day that the class was going to be taught, and I had to file an emergency, well, not an emergency, I had to file a pleading and then appear in court, and so I didn't get all of the 15 papers that the students had done the previous week graded. I told them, I'll get these to you next week, or I'll email them to you with my comments in the next day or two, on to the next. And, so at that point, they were unhappy with me. I was not as enthusiastic as I had originally been to teach there. And so we came to a mutual agreement that I would not teach. And I decided after that experience that, I would do other things. I would do arbitration. I was county commissioner. A lot of things going on. I wasn't really practicing law much after then, but it changed my view. And for-profit universities, and certainly this is not, the example I'm about to give is not a reflection at all on the University of Pheonix. I think they are legitimate for-profit university, one of the largest in the country. I think they have maybe 100,000 students rather. But in this day of DEI and attacking education and so forth, especially for minorities and women, then suddenly, we have Trump University. Well, we all know what Trump University was. It was a fraud. And it got settled as a fraud, and the university was disbanded, and the charitable trust of Donald Trump and some of his family members was abolished or otherwise not able to continue to exist in the state of New York, where the for-profit university fraud occurred. So, I look at that and I say, well, on to the next. So that is sort of an explanation of my my teaching experience, and I did want to talk about education, and I figured now would be the best time. And along that same vein, it's now the same time because I posted some articles or posts on Facebook and also on LinkedIn and various groups where I have joined with 200 or 300 other University of Michigan Law School students who would be characterized by MAGA world as DEI. In other words, they were black students. And we wrote to the University of Michigan Board of Trustees and the dean of the or acting dean of the University of Michigan Law School to express our sadness and dismay that the University of Michigan, especially the University of Michigan Law School, was taking a kneeling a knee rather, to Donald J. Trump and MAGA world demands that they either completely discontinue their DEI programs, whatever that is, diversity, equity, inclusion equals blacks, essentially, or else they were going to cut billions of dollars of research money to the University of Michigan. And this is the same bullying that you see from MAGA world and Donald Trump, people directed toward now more and more universities. They've got universities like Michigan State University and others all across the country that they are targeting one by one, rushing around trying to figure out how they can do away with their DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, whatever that is, and not lose billions of dollars of money that is needed for research and to fund the universities. And they're also somewhat concerned because these schools, especially schools like Michigan State, get tons of money from international students, including international students from China, who come here and pay great amounts of tuition on a relative basis and really spend a lot of money in local communities while they're here. You see all these students who can, at Michigan State from China and other places, who can hardly drive, but they go out and they buy a Mercedes-Benz or some really, really nice hot car. And I don't begrudge that. That's a class money type situation. But the universities are upset about it because they're starting to pull student visas for almost no reason of international students and using that as a lever to get rid of immigrants or student visas and all that kind of crap. And this also is something that the universities are all rushing around trying to figure out how to accommodate to protect their international students as opposed to losing federal funding for essential programs of all sorts. So that's the world we live in. It's a small world after all. It's a strange world after all. And it's a world that is in serious need of more education, more critical thinking, more awareness of the fact that the future is changing and our education methods and objectives will have to change because more and more people, especially people who are not well-educated people, will become expendable and replaced by AI or robotics. So I'll leave you with that happy thought. I hope that if you have differences of opinion, you'll either respond those to me on one of the written platforms where I've either blogged or posted on Facebook on some group or one of my profiles or pages, or since this will be hopefully a YouTube video podcast, go to my Minority ADR 2090 channel, find this particular podcast and leave your comments there, which YouTube allows you to do. Comments and questions if you have those. I'm busy. I will certainly want to look at them. I just ask that they be respectful, even if I disagree with it or you disagree with me. And with that, I hope you have a great week. Easter's coming, and then spring break, and then finally back to class for some of us. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.